Hey guys, welcome back to another voiceover breakdown. This week we are building off of what we did last week with this 2-on-1 grip setup. In the last video, we looked at using this to create sort of a push-pull effect so that we can scoot underneath our opponent and use our butterfly hooks to elevate and ultimately take our opponents back. So if you haven't seen that video, I will leave a link in the description box below so you can check it out. But this week we're going to look at using this 2-on-1 in a slightly different way. And I like to pair these two options together based on how my opponent reacts, okay? So in last week, we looked at using this 2-on-1, and what I'm looking to do is pull so that my opponent will retract his arm and create some momentum and space for me to scoot underneath. But sometimes I find when I go to lock up this 2-on-1 grip, my opponent stays stationary, okay? Maybe he really sits back on his heels. He doesn't commit to giving me much of a reaction, so it's hard for me to generate momentum, hard for me to get underneath. And so a second option that we can do is look to off-balance him and set up other offensive attacks, okay? So let's take a look here and we'll go through the slides, okay? So we're gonna look to establish our grips again. Always important to be proactive in your gripping. Try not to let your opponent dictate the action. Try to be the aggressor, try to take the lead. So I'm gonna look to establish the grips that I want first. And so this form of 2-on-1, I'm reaching across my body here with my left hand. I'm getting a nice grip on his wrist. And then with my right hand, I'm getting a sort of C-clamp grip just above his elbow, kind of on the back of his tricep, okay? So in the last video, I talked about the importance of 2-on-1 gripping in no-gi. With only one hand, I think the grips tend to be very weak, and anytime we can isolate one of their limbs with both of our arms, the control is going to be a lot better, and we're able to sort of reinforce our grips so that there isn't sort of just a weak area where they can simply pull away, okay? So both our arms are connected here on his one arm. I do like to keep the arm bent, okay? So you have to be careful here that if his arm were extended here, it's possible that he could reach for an underhook on his left side. So I keep the arm bent because through this, I want to pass this arm across my center line as I set up my triangle. Okay, so we've got our 2-on-1 grip here, and you'll notice that as we move to this next slide here, I go from the butterfly position now to, I take out my left foot there, okay? And what I'm trying to do here is off-balance my opponent, okay? So sometimes I get a 2-on-1 grip, and they just stay heavy on their knees. And this is a good opportunity then to attack their base, okay? If they're really settling in deep on their heels, what I like to do is take that left foot out. You'll notice it's the foot that's opposite to his arm that I have trapped, okay? So I have his left arm trapped, so I'm going to kick out his right leg, okay? And it's really important to kick out his leg in a meaningful way, okay? I'm not just simply looking to slide and widen his base. I want to put him in a predicament, okay? And what I mean by that is I want to kick out his leg so forcefully that if he doesn't post his hand, he's going to fall on his face, okay? And I need to do that because in order to set up the triangle, I have to get him to post his arm, okay? It also keeps him off balance, so it makes it much more difficult for him to start to attack me as well, okay? So you'll notice that when I've taken my left leg there and I kick his base out, I've widened his base, but I've made him commit a hand to the ground in an aggressive way to stop from falling forward, okay? The other thing that this does too is it widens my opponent out, okay? If you get an opponent that keeps their elbows pinched tight to their body, it's really hard to get them to open up. And so when I kick out his base and I get him to post, you'll notice that I've created all this space, okay? Because what I'm going to have to do is, we'll go to the next slide, is I'm going to need to get my leg out and around his arm, okay? So let's move on to the next slide here. So this is where I start to make my transition to securing the triangle, okay? And you'll notice what I've done here is a couple things. First and foremost is, you'll see, as I was mentioning earlier, I'm pulling his arm across my body. I am pulling him into me, but it's super important that I get his arm across my body. that will make the triangle a lot deeper and a lot more difficult for him to escape once we land in our position. It will also prevent him from getting an underhook on his left side, which could really shut down some of my offense. As far as my feet go, you'll notice now I've completely sort of moved away from butterfly. I now have my right foot on his hip, okay? I use that as a post. Two reasons that I do this. One, I need to escape my leg from outside of his inner thigh so that I can lace it around for a triangle. It also enables me to, if need be, keep distance. If this falls apart, I want to have a barrier in the way, so if he does start to sort of crush me, I can push away and sort of retreat or go into another option. The other thing that post on his hip does is it can also allow me to really drive my left leg nice and high to get a really nice deep triangle, okay? But it also creates a post for me so that I can push on his hip, and it makes my left leg here a little bit light, okay? You'll notice that I'm retracting my knee to my chest so that I can get my left leg around his posted arm, okay? So we'll move forward here. You'll see now I lace that left leg around, and I look to lock up that sort of triangle very quickly, okay? It's not finished here. We're going to get into the finished details in a second, but you'll notice here we've fallen into a triangle. His left arm is across my body, which is sometimes a hard thing to achieve if you just land into a triangle and the left arm is on the outside of the body. It's usually an extra step to try to sort of lift your hips and bring the arm to the other side. And so the beauty of this is as we're doing this 2-on-1 and drawing him into us, it gets his arm in this deep position already, okay? So what I'm talking about here about creating an angle, okay? I used to struggle a lot with triangles. I have a great training partner named Tom that is amazing with them. And, you know, we're taught this early on, but I feel like a lot of people commit to triangles in a more sort of front triangle position, meaning that his head is over my head and sort of my shoulders are flat on the mat. What I want to try to do is either scoop under his leg or I can scoop under his arm as I'm doing here. I have shorter arms and my partner here is a longer guy, and so it's a far reach for me to try to get under his thigh to cut the angle. So an easier option is for me to scoop under his arm. And we'll look at cutting this angle from a different angle in a second. But why it's important to sort of angle off in your triangle is that I do think it attacks the neck arteries more directly. I think when you fall into a traditional front triangle where you're not cutting an angle, your opponent's shoulder can get in the way, and it can make it really difficult to truly compress around the carotid arteries. I feel like anytime you can cut the angle, it sort of takes their shoulder out of play, and it really starts to compress around the area that's gonna really shut your opponent off much more efficiently and much more effectively. Okay, so we're moving along here. Okay, so I get my grip, I kick my partner out. There's me scooting underneath. I'm pulling him into me as I recline back, okay? So I scoot my hips underneath him. I'm pulling him into me, and I'm also scooting onto my back, okay? So closing the lock efficiently, okay? So what do I mean by this slide? Well, a lot of times we're taught sort of in the triangle position to sort of grab our shin with our hand, and then I see a lot of people that post their right foot on the floor, and it helps them sort of shrimp out and cut the angle so that they can really close a nice tight triangle. And in a lot of times, I feel like that's a bit of a mistake, especially in no-gi when we don't have, collar grips that we can secure our opponent's posture with. I feel like anytime I open this triangle to lock it tighter, it just gives my opponent an opportunity to potentially posture up and escape. So what I like to try to do is I like to adjust the triangle with as little space and movement as possible. And so you'll notice here that I've basically grabbed my shin and I've adjusted to close it without opening it, okay? I'm not posting my foot on his hip. I'm not posting my foot on the ground. I've used that scoop underneath his arm to help me cut the angle, okay? So I don't need to post my foot on the floor to sort of shrimp and cut the angle, okay? So I have short legs too, so if I'm able to do this on an opponent, a lot of people should be able to do this on an opponent without much trouble, okay? Obviously, if your opponent is much broader and thicker, it's more difficult, but it's a good sort of thing to keep in mind to try to minimize the space that you create when you're looking to finish this triangle and lock up your legs like this, okay? Here's a nice angle that we can start to look at some of the finishing details here, okay? You'll notice that I scoop his arm. It looks kind of like I'm almost doing a reverse arm lock here, which is not what I'm trying to do. It's certainly a possibility, but I'm using the scoop grip on his arm to primarily cut an angle, and I'm also doing it to help keep his defensive options at bay, okay? If he has a free hand, he can start to post on my face or my head or my neck and start to build a base and start to posture up. If I've got this arm trapped, not only is there a potential reverse arm lock in place, but it helps to control him a little bit better as well, okay? So when we get to the finishing details here, I talk about angle and alignment, okay? You'll notice it's sort of like attacking an arm lock from the bottom. I look to sort of cut an angle so that I'm looking in my opponent's ear, okay? You'll notice the direction of the arrow here. I'm looking into his ear. It doesn't have to be like a 90-degree angle, but if I can get offline just a little bit, it'll really take his shoulder out of play and really start to apply the squeeze right around his carotid arteries, okay? The other thing that I like to do, and what I notice that a lot of people don't do, is I like to align my legs in the same direction that I'm looking, okay? So you'll notice that I'm looking in his ears, and now my legs start to flow in that same direction. Sometimes I see people that are on an angle, but it's almost like their leg is going more in a direction that would be like across the back of my opponent. And I think that that actually is a more difficult way to finish the triangle, okay? Again, this is something that I've learned from rolling with people with great triangles, is they start to adjust their leg position, okay? So you'll notice this nice straight line that I have here, okay? The other thing is that when I attack the triangle this way, I don't necessarily need to lock my left leg right behind my right knee. You'll notice it's up around my calf a little bit more, and that's completely fine. I feel like I can get a better squeeze that way, and it might seem counterintuitive, but when you angle off in this direction and you start to get your legs in alignment, the squeeze is so much tighter. You'll notice that my right thigh is right on the back of his neck, okay? And all of that pressure is squeezing right around his carotid artery, okay? His shoulder is nowhere to be seen. There's no space here. Everything's bullet tight. And now I'm ready to put the finishing touch on this with my squeeze, okay? So the finishing squeeze is, again, pretty simple, but I always look to engage all of my muscle groups in this, okay? I'm trying to almost do a compression, like compacting a snowball. I'm looking to sort of pressure and take all the space away around his neck. So in order to do that, I need to pinch my thighs together, and I don't like to have lazy feet, especially my top right foot. I like to engage my toes towards the ceiling, okay? And then I like to pinch my thighs and do like a hamstring curl so that I almost bring my heels to the ground, okay? I am not pushing my opponent down and away from me, okay? I want my opponent's head to stay basically where it is now, okay? I see sometimes people go to finish the triangle, and it's like they extend their hips, and their opponent almost falls over onto the side. That's not what I'm looking to do here, okay? I'm looking to keep everything nice and tight. The squeeze is there with my thighs, and I'm looking to simply draw my heels towards the ground, and it becomes incredibly tight, okay? So we get the tap here, and that's a look at it, guys. This is one of my favorite ways to set up the triangle now. The 2-on-1 grip, this is a really powerful grip. I really enjoy using it. There's all kinds of offensive options from there, from butterfly sweeps to back takes to arm drags to triangle setups. I hope you got something out of this video. If you like these voiceover breakdowns, please leave a comment below and let me know what you think. If there's any techniques or ideas that you'd like for me to cover, you can leave a comment below. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at PFed Music. As always, please like, subscribe, share. I hope you got something out of this video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.